Okay. Last week we read up to page 65, section 4. Today we have to start from the Chinese parallels to the Susima Sutta. Before going into that, if you have any word or any phrase or any sentence structure that you feel uncomfortable, we can also look at that, because this discussion is not only for subject matter, we also try to improve our English reading and understanding. In page 64, previous page, from down 4, 6, 8, 9 line, you have something called one of these that is given star billing is Susima Sutta. What is star billing? The one that is given star billing is Susima Sutta. What is star billing? Now look at this word. It is in the page 64. Do you find that? Now from below, 9th line, page 64, look at from below. Yeah. What is star billing? Okay. See, that's why there are some terms. Now, star billing is, I think, usual American colloquial term, which means given the highest position. Highest position. So, star billing, that it is given the star billing is Susima Sutta. So, that means in these discussions, Susima Sutta has been given the most prominent, highest position. So, that is what they mean by star billing, okay. But this word star billing is more like a colloquial term used in day-to-day like TV English and things like that. But so there are phrases like that. So up to this point we discussed the Susima Sutta as it occurs in the Pali Canon, and also the questions arise from that. Basically we were also reading about in the section 3 the Sukha Vipassaka Arahant and the Susima Sutta. Bhikkhu Bodhi's interpretation seemed to be that although this concept of Sukha Vipassaka, the commentators want to say that the Sukha Vipassakas don't have jhanas, but commentator doesn't say that directly. I mean, that is his interpretation. Now we will go to Chinese parallels, starting from page 65. At this point, it will be illuminating to turn to the parallels to S 1270, preserved in Chinese translation. It will be illuminating, it will be revealing, it will be giving, explaining more. Illuminating means giving light. In M. Vinaya, Mula Sarvastivadi Vinaya, M I think refers to Mula Sarvastivadi, M. Vinaya, Susima inquires from the monks, not about all 5 super knowledges, but only about the divine eye that sees how beings passed away and take rebirth according to their karma, and about the recollection of the past life. Last 2 of these super knowledges, given here in inverse order from S270, as well as about the peaceful formless emancipation. Like according to Mula Sarvastivadi Vinaya, Susima doesn't inquire about all 5 things. He inquires about only 2 knowledges of 2 abhinyas, and also formless, peaceful, formless emancipation. As in S1270, the monks deny possessing the attainments. Okay, now Mula Sarvastivadi Vinaya version is also equal. As in the Sanjutta Nikaya version, monks deny possessing these attainments. They say that they don't have these attainments. When Susima asked them how they could declare final knowledge in the Buddha's presence, final knowledge is the translation of word Anya. Anya Vyakata, right? That is the Pali term. So Anya basically means knowledge. And nya to know, Anya. But here it is Anya Vyakata means basically when someone declares that he or she is an arahant, that is what is called Anya Vyakata. So that's been translated as final knowledge. They reply, we are wisdom liberated ones. Okay? Thus, Mula Sarvastivadi Vinaya is fairly close to S270. It is virtually impossible to judge which is likely to be more original. It is virtually impossible. Now, what is the difference between it is impossible, it is virtually impossible? It is impossible, if you say it is impossible, that means it is impossible. It is virtually impossible means it doesn't say exactly it is impossible, it is somewhat, kind of impossible. That's the virtually. So virtually doesn't give exactly. Now if you say it is impossible, then there is one meaning. But it's virtually impossible means sort of, it is not exactly. So we like to be more original. What do you mean by more original? Actually in the textual analysis, they always want to see which sutta came first, which is older, which is more recent. So here Bhikkhu Bodhi says that which is original, it is virtually. That means it is not very easy to decide. Usually, like the 5 super knowledges of Sanyutta 1270 or 2 mentioned in the Vinaya. The twofold scheme has the advantage of economy. The twofold scheme has the advantage of economy. What is that? What is the meaning of advantage of economy? Twofold scheme has the advantage of economy? Well, what that means is what? The following. Now, when you have 5, it is more. But if you have 2, it is less. So, economy means when you have lesser list, it has advantage of economy. Now, usually in the academic studies or similar things, if you can do with less number, that is better than doing with larger number. So, in the Pali Sutta, 5 mentioned. Mula Sarvasti Vinaya only 2 mentioned. So, usually if you can do with 2, it is better than doing with 5. And also, other thing is, economy, greater detail usually suggests lateness. Now, what is that? Greater detail usually suggests lateness. Now, in the textual analysis, if you compare, study 2 texts, similar text, but if one text has more detail, usually scholars think that one with more detail is later, one with less detail is earlier. Now again, this is accepted, it may not be true all the time, but usually what happens is when you have a shorter version, subsequently that version is given in detail. So the detailed version can be always later version. Shorter version can be always the earlier version. But again, that may not be 100% in all the places, but this is, everything is usually. Usually if you have a shorter version, so now here in this context, the shorter version is Mula Sarvastivada, longer version is Sanyutta Nikaya. So, people tend to think Mula Sarvastivada version may be earlier. But if the sutta originates from a real historical incident, it could well have been that the wanderers suspected the Buddhist monk to be adept in spiritual powers and mind reading, the first and third super knowledge, which ostentatious ascetics would be most likely to use to impress gullible lay devotees. What does it mean by this ostentatious? Ostentatious. ascetics to impress gullible lay devotees. Ostentatious means pretending, who want to pretend something that they don't have. That is ostentatious. Gullible means easily deceived people are gullible people. You say a story, and if somebody believes it without any question, then that person is a gullible person. So ostentatious means pretending person. So if you want to pretend that you have such a great knowledge, you can deceive these gullible. Gullible, ordinary people means people who will believe anything. So the Mulasarvasti Vinaya refers to these two things. Those are the more likely things to be used by impress gullible lay devotees, particularly in a royal capital like Rajagaha. This would then be better explain Susima's skepticism that there could be wisdom-liberated arahant who lack such powers. So this would then better explain Susima's skepticism. Skepticism means doubt. Skepticism means doubt. That there could be wisdom-liberated arahant who lack. So actually Susima was doubting, how can there be wisdom-liberated arahants, who lack these powers. As with SA 347, what is SA? SA is Sanjutta Nikaya Atthakatha, and the Vibhasha version. SA could be Sanjutta Nikaya, but A is no, SA is not Sanjutta Nikaya Atthakatha actually. Let me see. Sanyutta Agama. So SA, long A is Agama. So SA means Sanyutta Agama. Now he is studying, I think, 3 pieces from Chinese literature. First one is M. Mulasarvastivadi Vinaya. Next one is SA, Sanyutta Agama. And the Vibhasha version, that the divergences from S12.7 to become significant. Now, Sanyutta Agama differences are more significant. For these versions, straight away transform the monks into Sarvasvadin counterparts of the Pali commentarial dry insight Arahant. So, these versions mean these Chinese versions, straight away transform the monks into Sarvastivadin counterparts. Now, Sarvastivadin counterpart means Sarvastivada monks. So, the word counterpart can be referred to anything you are using, you referring to. Now, if you are Burmese Buddhist monks, you can talk about your Sri Lankan counterparts. Now, Sri Lankan counterpart means Sri Lankan monks. So, like that, in that context. Though these versions do not have a neat appellation for this figure, it is evident that the text here wants the expression wisdom liberated one. Neat appellation. Appellation means way of addressing. Name. Appellation means way of addressing. Convey much of the same idea that expression Panya Vimutta as used in the Susima Sutta conveys to the Sanyutta commentary. One liberated without jhana, nijjanaka, entirely through wisdom. So the whole issue is, you are discussing one liberated without jhana. The Pali term is nijjanaka, without jhana. As in S 1270 and Mulasarvastivadi Vinaya, so here Susima enters the Sangha for the purpose of stealing the Dhamma. Now the same story. He is ordained by the enlightened one's behest. He is ordained, enlightened one's behest means, that means Buddha did not ordain him, but somebody else ordained him for the Buddha, on behalf of the Buddha. That is what it means. He was enlightened one's behest. But it is stated that the Buddha already knew his intention in going forth. In the Pali Sutta, it doesn't say that Buddha knew why Susima came. Buddha may have known it, but Pali Sutta doesn't say. But Sanjutta Agama Sutta says that Buddha knew. A fortnight after his ordination, one monk at the head of the group of monks tells him he should be aware that they have all won the goal. Susima then asks him whether he had attained the first, second, third, fourth jhanas or the peaceful formless emancipations, and he adds to each question, by the non-arising of any influxes, is your mind well liberated? So he asks from each question this question. And he questions about the first, third, fourth, the jhanas. In each case, monks answers no. The purport being, purport means the intention, being that they have exhausted the influxes and gained full liberation of mind without relaying. Purport means also meaning, the idea, what you want to convey. So the purport being that they have exhausted the influxes. Influxes means asavas, and gain full liberation without. How could this be? What you have said is inconsistent. Your later words contradict your earlier. How is that you don't attain jhana, yet you attain declaration arahantship? The monks then say, I am realized, liberated by wisdom. Actually, Susima thinks that for someone to be arahant then, but still not having these things is a contradiction. But monks say that, no, we are liberated by wisdom. Thereupon, the whole group of monks depart, realizing that he now needs clarification. Susima decides to seek help from the Buddha. So he goes to the Buddha in search of, clarification. The Vibhasha version of the Sutta is evidently later than the others, at least in its final redaction. For it speaks of Susima after taking full ordination as having read and recited the Tripitaka. Now, according to Bhikkhu Bodhi's interpretation, this Vibhasha version is later, because it says that Susima had read and recited the Tripitaka. Now, this shows that Susima Chinese version was made at a time when monks were studying all three Pitakas. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, of course, there was no Pitakas anyway, right? And then there were no three Pitakas anyhow, even if the Pitakas were there. So any reference to Pitaka is, not very appropriate. A phrase that refers anachronistically to the classification of the sacred scriptures. What is anachronistically? It refers to anachronistically. Anachronistically means opposition to that time sequence, or against the time sequence. But it's something like this. Anachronistically means here, the Sutta says that Susima during the time of the Buddha studied Tripitaka. But Tripitaka came into being after. So if you say that during the time the Buddha, somebody started, studied Tripitaka, then it is anachronistic. Anachronistic means it violates the time sequence. Get it? Because during the time of the Buddha, you can't talk about somebody studying Tripitaka. So anachronistic means that goes against the time sequence. Okay. What happens is, like when you prepare the sutta after later time, by that time, of course, there were Tripitaka. So you attribute to one who was during the time of the Buddha that he studied Tripitaka. But that is anachronistic, because that doesn't tally with the time. Similar example is in Dhammapadatta Katha, when Venerable Cakkupala goes to the Buddha and says that he is old, so he can't practice Grantadura, he will practice Vidassanadura. Okay? But during the time of the Buddha, there was no such thing called Grantadura and Vipassanadura. It started very much later. So how can Venerable Cakkupala say that he will go for Vidassanadura because he is too old to practice Gantadura? He can't say that. Now, that statement is anachronistic. You understand? Because it goes against the time. Because during the time of the Buddha, there was no such thing called Grantadura or Vidarshanadura. So how can Chakkupala say to the Buddha that he will? So actually it comes because when the commentary was written, there were these two Duras, Grantadura and Vidarshanadura, and you can say that. So these are examples of anachronisticism. So he says it is, then goes on down, the answer was answer no, they answer no, then was it on the basis of the second, third or fourth jhanas or the peaceful formless emancipations that you attain the exhaustion? They answer no. Susima then says, then without depending on any jhana, you attain the exhaustion of the influxes. Who can believe that? The monk then say, we are liberated by wisdom. Then as in the other versions, Susima turns to the Buddha for help. The Buddha explains, those monks first exhausted the influxes based on the access to the jhana, and afterward they aroused the basic jhana. Now what the Buddha says is, number 41 refers to Taisho version. Those monks first exhausted the influxes based on the access to the jhana. Now access to the jhana means upachara samadhi, and afterwards arouse the basic jhana. So actually here the explanation shows that in fact those monks had jhanas, but at the time of becoming an arahant, they just had access jhana, and subsequently they had the full jhana. So though SA 347 and Vibhasha differ in details, they are both regarded as affiliated in some way with the Sarvastivada, which must have been not one unified entity, but an umbrella term for a range of schools with collections of texts that showed considerable variation. So when the Bhikkhu Bodhi says, when we say that they belong to Sarvastivada, Sarvastivada was not referring to one particular monastic tradition, but it was an umbrella term. Umbrella term means it refers to within umbrella so many things can come. So under Sarvastivada many Buddhist traditions came, so they did not have any particularly fixed text. What the text had was variations. Since Sarvastivada and Theravada widely recognized to be the two branches of the old Staviravada, and the first major schism in archaic Sangha, archaic means old, ancient, resulted in this bifurcation. Bifurcation, division into two, the Staviravada and Mahasangika. When the readings in one Staviravada version, when the reading is one, Stiravada version and the Mahasangika version of a text agree, and reading in another Stiravada version diverges, it is likely that the latter results from a later alteration or transmutation of the text. Later means what comes later, results from a later alteration or transmutation. Alteration means change. Transmutation means exchange of the material. Transmutate in the text because you take some material in some place and place material in some other place. Of course, we cannot always be absolutely certain that this is so, but the above stipulation is generally safe guideline to follow. Stipulation. You stipulate means you make up some kind of tentative theory. That is the stipulate. You stipulate, you think something to be the case temporarily, not as just for the sake of explaining, you stipulate. And the Vibhasha. And in the case of Sanjutta Agama and Vibhasha, quite apart from the passages with doctrinal ramifications. What are the doctrinal ramifications? ramification. If you have any doubt about these terms, the best thing is for every term, refer to the dictionary and be very sure, because that way, it becomes stable in your mind. Now, doctrinal ramifications means, ramify means doctrinally certain things rise because of that. So, doctrinally ramifications are doctrinal implications. Implications means doctrinally you can say, if this is so, then this is the case, and so on. So, ramify means in a way multiply things, ramifications. One example is a certain flair for detail in Sanyutta. Flair means tendency there, likeness. Another is reference to the Tripitaka in Vibhasha, and the Vibhasha refers to. Now these things, because even earlier he said, when you have something somewhere more detailed version can be later version. Less detailed version can be earlier version. And then, okay, this is the analysis of the Vibhasha, Mula Sarvastivadi Vinaya, and also Sangutta Agama. Three things. Now, we go to the section 5, assessment. Sanyutta Agama 347 and Vibhasha thus present us with an interesting case where the Sarvastivada recension of a sutta give utterance to an idea that it is not found in the Theravada version. Sarvastivada recension. Sarvastivada recension means Sarvastivada version actually. Recension means the idea comes from when the Tripitaka was formulated and recited by the Sangha. So recension means the reading of Tripitaka belonging to one particular. So you can talk about the Sarvastivada recension, Theravada recension, and so on. So it is the versions, the adopted by different traditions, recension. But in its own, recension means to have a version of something. So here the Sarvastivada recension means Sarvastivada versions. Interesting thing is Sarvastivada recensions have an idea that is not found in the Theravada. Namely the idea of an Arahant who has reached final liberation without any attainment of the jhanas. Now the interesting thing is, although Theravada text doesn't say that very clearly, Sarvastivada text very clearly say that he doesn't have, these arahants do not have jhanas. So, Sarvastivada very clearly says that. In the Theravada tradition, however, the idea came to open expression only in the commentaries. Because in the discourses, Theravada, you don't have this idea. Sutta in the Theravada tradition doesn't say that these arahants did not have jhana, but it is said in the commentary. But in the Sarvastivada Sanyutta Agama, it says very clearly in the sutta itself. With the concept of Sukha Vipassaka or dry insight Arahant. Now this concept of dry insight Arahant is not found in sutta discourses. It is found only in the commentaries. So in the commentarial tradition, Sukha Vipassaka means the person who doesn't have jhanas. This idea must have gained such prestige that it presented itself either to the ancient anonymous authors of the lost Sinhala commentaries. Anonymous authors. Anonymous means no name. We don't know their name. Anonymous authors of the Sinhala commentaries, or to Acharya Buddha Ghosha, compiler of the present Pali commentaries, as the key to understanding Panya Vimutta Arahant. In this way, the Sukha Vipassaka Arahant, though hidden behind the text of Susima Sutta itself, found a secure lodging in its commentary. What do you understand by that sentence? In this way, the Sukha Vipassaka Arahant, though hidden behind the text of the what is the hidden behind the text of the Susima Sutta itself? Found a secure lodging in its commentary. Yeah, hidden behind the text of the Susima Sutta means even in the Susima Sutta it is not said directly, but it is kind of implied. The difference is in the Sarvastivada literature, Sutta directly says that they did not have, but in the Susima Sutta, it doesn't say directly that they did not have jhanas. But it is kind of hidden behind the text means, if you really analyze the text, you can see that that is the idea. But it is expressed very clearly without any doubt in the commentary. Several canonical texts, however, suggest that even prior to the commentarial period, the archaic concept of the Panya Vimutta was already being reinterpreted in the direction of dry insight Arahant. So there are these texts, you can see that idea being reinterpreted in the direction of dry insight Arahant. We saw above that, according to Kitagiri Sutta, the Arahant liberated by wisdom was distinguished from Arahant liberated in both ways. So you have Upato Bhaga Vimutta, but Upato Bhaga Vimutta is different from Panya Vimutta. Okay. Is that okay if I sit down here somewhere? So Kitagiri Sutta. The latter can attain them, the former cannot. In the Puggala Panyati, the fourth book of Abhidhamma Pitaka, these definitions are subtly rephrased. The Arahant liberated in both ways is now a person who dwells having contacted the 8 emancipations with the body. Kayena Attavimokke Sachikaritva, right? And having seen with wisdom his influxes are exhausted. And corresponding to this, Arahant liberated by wisdom is a person who does not dwell having contacted the 8 emancipations. So the difference is that you don't have 8 emancipations. The subtle change in wording between this definition and that in the Kitagiri Sutta, an almost inconspicuous change. What is an almost inconspicuous change? What does that mean? Almost inconspicuous means almost unnoticeable, cannot be seen. Conspicuous means very clear, very obvious. Inconspicuous means cannot be clear. The new definition gracefully suggests that the Arahant liberated by wisdom need not possess any of the 8 emancipations, including the lower 3, which comprise the 4 jhanas. Although the Puggala Panyati commentary glosses these 2 definitions in the same way, glosses means described, that it does the older definition. The new definition opens the door for just a crack, but does not indeed open it. Just a crack, but indeed does not open means it cracks. It creates a very minor crack, not really an opening. That means new definition doesn't try to do that very clearly, but only tries to do that as a very subtle manner. That means crack. Crack and opening. Difference is crack means if you have a line going on the wall, that's a crack. But opening means the wall is broken and you can see through. So that's the difference. So what the Bhikkhu Bodhi says is that in the Theravada tradition, this idea in the discourses is not really given full expression. Only it is indicated. Okay. Now since the Puggala Panyati is an Abhidhamma tract and thus of later provenance than Nikayas, so Bhikkhu Bodhi says Abhidhamma is later than the Nikayas, it may not be altogether surprising to find a revised definition of the 2 types of Arahant. So in the Puggala Panyati you find a revised the definition. Because according to Bhikkhu Bodhi, Puggala Panyati is, being Abhidhamma tract. Tract means, like a short book or something. But it is a bit astonishing to find the above definitions actually incorporated into a sutta. And then subsequently, when you look at, he says that these definitions are incorporated into a sutta. A discourse in the Anguttara Nikaya called Putta Sutta, 487, distinguishes 4 types of ascetics. Among them, one known as red lotus ascetic, and another known as white lotus ascetic. The red lotus ascetic, Samana Paduma, is defined as a monk who has realized by direct knowledge the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and dwells in it, and who also dwells, having contacted with the body, the 8 emancipations. The white lotus ascetic, Samana Pundarika, is a monk who, with the destruction of the taints, has realized for himself with direct knowledge in this very life the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, having entered upon it, dwells in it, yet he does not dwell, having contacted with the body, 8 emancipation. So, Samana Paduma and Samana Pundarika. So, Samana Paduma means red lotus, Pundarika means white lotus. So, Samana Pundarika, white lotus, means he doesn't have 8 emancipations. The commentary identifies the red lotus ascetic with Upatobhaga Vimutta, Arahant liberated in both ways. Since the Sutta definition here matches the Puggala Panyati definition of this type, but it does not simply identify the white lotus ascetic point blank with the Panya Vimutta, the Arahant liberated by wisdom. It says rather, by this he shows the dry insight Arahant. Now you see, commentary doesn't say directly that Samana Pundarika is Panya Vimutta, but it says that Samana Pundarika is similar to Sukha Vipassaka. Okay. Now the issue is this, like the commentarial tradition, it seems that did not want to really directly say that Buddha in the suttas taught that someone can become an arahant without jhanas. It is simply because of that. Because the standard view was that you have to have jhanas in order to attain arahanthood. So it seems to me that there are 2 ways to account for these definitions, or the 2 types of lotus ascetic in the Putta Sutta. 2 ways. Either the sutta itself is a later composition that was inserted into Anguttara Nikaya, incorporating the new definition of Upatobhaga Vimutta Arahant and the Panya Vimutta Arahant that were being framed during the period of scholastic elaboration. Scholastic means basically Abhidharma. In Buddhist tradition, scholasticism means Abhidhamma. That means analysis of doctrines in a more methodical manner done by scholars. So, scholastic elaboration. That brought the Puggala Panyati into being. Now, Puggala Panyati is a result of this scholastic analysis. Or alternatively, the sutta itself is archaic, but an original version employing definition of the 2 types of arahant matching those in the Kitagiri Sutta had been updated to accommodate the new definitions that were canonized in the Puggala Panyati. I would suggest too that behind the scenes, the mode of thought that influenced the definition of the 2 lotus ascetics of the Putta Sutta was also exerting its influence on the interpretation of Susima Sutta. So while the wording of Pali version of Susima Sutta was not altered, and it could thus still be interpreted as simply denying that the monks declaring arahantship possessed the super knowledges and that the formless emancipations, among the influential body of early Pali exegetes, it was already being seen as a paradigmatic text for the figure of tri-insight arahant. Now, among the early Pali exegetes, exegete means person who provide exegesis, commentator really. It was already being seen as paradigmatic text. What is the paradigmatic text? Paradigmatic text means paradigm that word comes from the word paradigm. Paradigmatic text means real ideal text, very good text. To highlight this distinction, paradigmatic text for the figure of the dry insight Arahant. Within the Theravada school, this interpretation of the Sutta first came to literary expression in its commentary. Within the Theravada school, this interpretation came to literary expression in the commentary. That means it was really clearly said by words only in the commentary. In contrast, among those in the broad Sarvastivada camp, a parallel commentarial stance towards the Sutta had already become strong enough to burst the bonds of sacerdotal hesitancy and focus its way into the primary text itself. Now, in the Sarvastivada literature, of course, it came into clear expression, not like in the Theravada literature. It was clearly expressed. Burst into the bonds of sacerdotal hesitancy. Actually, sacerdotal hesitancy, that word is, I do not know exact meaning. We will have to look at the dictionary for that. Force its way into the primary text itself. In this camp, the Sutta must have become altered in such a way as to grant canonical legitimacy to the figure Arahant, wholly bereft of the jhanas. Not only do the wisdom-liberated monks on Sanyutta Agama and the Vibhasha version deny that they possess 4 jhanas, but the Sarvastivada commentaries even redefine the concept of the Panya Vimutta in such a way that any possession of jhana by a Panya Vimutta Arahant compromises and corrupts the purity of his possession. Panya Vimutta. So Sarvastivada literature not only says that they don't have, actually they make it a very important factor, aspect of Panya Vimutta Arahant. Because if Panya Vimutta Arahant has jhanas, it's really not a very good thing. So it really compromises or corrupts the purity of his Panya Vimutta Arahantship. Now you see the distinction. So initially Panya Vimutta Arahant was alluded or hinted at, that he doesn't have jhanas. But in the Sarvastivada literature, it is not only said, not only clearly said, when it comes to the commentary, it clearly says that Panya Vimutta Arahant cannot really have jhanas. We thus find that the Abhidharma Mahavibhasha Sastra, great commentary of the Kashmiri Sarvastivadins, distinguishes 2 kinds of Panya Vimutta Arahant. So they distinguish, they have 2 kinds of Panya Vimutta Arahant, making specific reference to the Susima Sutta. The question: it is said here several times that one liberated by wisdom aroused the knowledge of others' minds. This necessarily depends on the basic jhana. But if the wisdom liberated one can arouse the basic jhana, does this not contradict the Susima Sutta? In that sutta it is said, the wisdom liberated one cannot arouse the basic jhana. So if you say that he can generate basic jhana, then it contradicts the Susima Sutta. Then reply goes like this: there are 2 kinds of wisdom liberated ones, the partial and the complete. The one partially liberated by wisdom is able to arouse 1, 2 or 3 among the 4 jhanas. The one completely liberated by wisdom cannot arouse any of the 4 jhanas. The Susima Sutta speaks about the one completely liberated by wisdom, who cannot arouse any of the 4 jhanas. So according to Mahavibhasha Sastra, fully Panya Vimutta Arahant cannot have jhanas. The earliest version of the Susima Sutta received by archaic Sarvastivada school, archaic means ancient, old, we might suppose was probably quite similar to S1270. And Mula Sarvastivine regarding the question, qualities denied of the Panya Vimutta Arahant. During the historical evolution of the Sutta, however, these came to be altered, transformed into a complete denial that they possess jhanas. While it is possible that such alterations could have occurred by unconscious habit in the course of oral transmission. What is that? Unconscious habit in the course of oral transmission. Sometimes, when you transmit something orally, certain things can change even without your knowledge. Because, you are used to say something in such a way that it could change even without your knowledge. Given that the Sarvastivada came to place such a strong emphasis upon the absence of jhanas in the ideal type, Panyayamuttarahant, we may suspect that the alteration was deliberate. Alteration was deliberate, means on purpose. Okay, we move on to the page 73, next paragraph. Unless the Sarvastivadin commentators, the Theravadins never went so far as to distinguish degrees among the Panyayamuttarahant. So, Theravadins never have degrees, different degrees among the Panyayamuttarahant. According to the Pali commentaries, all 5 types, those Arahant who attain any of the 4 jhanas and the dry insight Arahant are equally entitled to be called liberated by wisdom. So, according to Pali commentary, all 5, as long as they do not attain the peaceful formless emancipation. So, according to Pali commentary, Rupa jhanas are okay. Only thing is, so long as they don't have Arupa jhanas, then of course, they can be called Panyavimuttas. One can detect in certain texts a subtle shift taking place in its weight towards the dry insight Arahant. This is manifest in the definition of the white lotus ascetic in the Putta Sutta as one without the 8 emancipations, defined by the Anguttara commentary as a dry insight Arahant. Again, it appears in a similar definition, one liberated by wisdom in the Puggala Panyati. And it come up, still again in the commentarial gloss on the expression liberated by wisdom in the Susima Sutta as without jhana, dry insight meditators, liberated simply by wisdom only. So it goes on. We will move on to the last paragraph on the same page 73. We thus see that at the commentarial level, the Theravada wound up with an interpretative concept. Wound up means completed their discussion, interpretative concept that closely matched an idea that the Sarvastivadin had already inserted into the text. Now what it means is, in the Theravada commentarial literature, they came very close to an idea which was inserted by Sarvastivadin in the Sutta itself. Because in the Sarvastivada, that Panyavimuttas do not have jhanas is clearly mentioned in the discourse itself. But in the Theravada tradition, it comes in only in the commentarial tradition. So for Sarvastivadins, it comes directly from the mouth of the Buddha. To what extent this idea is already intended by the Pali Suttas that speak about monks who attain arahantship via painful or strenuous path of meditation on the unattractive nature of the body, repulsiveness of the food, we refer to those things in our first discussion, the inevitability of death and other topics tending to disenchantment is difficult to determine. Bodhi says that it is difficult to determine whether this Dukkha Patipada practitioners, how they, to what extent they had jhanas or not. What is certain, however, is that the Pali Suttas never explicitly admit the existence of Arahant who altogether dispense with jhanas. Now that thing should be very clear. In the Pali discourses, you don't have any one single case where in the discourses, they say that Arahant without jhanas. It might also be important to note that the Sarvastivadin did not adopt the term Sukha Vipassaka or any other term that quite matches it. So Sarvastivadins don't have this term. While this may be just a matter of circumstance. What is just a matter of circumstance? Matter of circumstance means simply because Sarvastivadins were developed in different areas, Theravadins were developed in different areas. Circumstance means, the peripheral matters. simply because the term Sukha Vipassaka arose in an exegetical camp geographically far removed from their own centers of activity. So Sukha Vipassaka term originated in a geographically different area, and Sarvastivadin did not happen to be there. Another more fundamental reason may also be involved. It is possible that the Sarvastivadin did not speak of a dry insight Arahant because they never introduced the scission. Scission means separation between Samatha and Vipassana as sharply as the Theravadin commentarial tradition did, but saw the path of any Panyayamutta Arahant to involve an interplay of these two meditative factors. So Sarvastivadins really did not separate these two things. They saw interplay of Samatha and Vipassana. So Sarvastivada tradition is different from that point of view. To qualify as a full Panya Vimuktarahant, as one who is utterly bereft of jhana, this practitioner must end the development of Samatha at the level called Samantaka Dhyana, threshold meditation, corresponding to the access concentration. Upachara Samadhi in the Theravada commentaries. But it seems that they never conceived the idea of a meditator who makes bare inside the vehicle. Vipassana Yanika, Sukha Vipassaka Yanika. The distinctly Theravada notion. So Sukha Vipassaka notion is clearly Theravada notion. Okay, last paragraph, page 74. Nevertheless, despite these differences, both these major Sthaviravada traditions as well as Mahasangikas have preserved versions of the same story telling how an ascetic named Susima infiltrated the Buddha's Sangha. Infiltrated means came inside secretly and entered into dialogue with the Panyayamutta monks and with the Tathagata. In the two traditions we know most about, the encounter became an important canonical pillar for the belief that arahantship was possible without the jhanas. Now, why this Susima Sutta is very important, because, it shows this possibility. There can be an arahant without jhana. In one tradition, this idea was stated explicitly in the sutta itself. That means in the Sarvastivada tradition. In the other, it rested upon the explication of the text by commentary. In the Theravada tradition, it simply was left to commentary. But as I read it, Bhikkhu Bodhi says, even the older version of Sutta, S2 1270, and perhaps 2 Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya, originally intended to establish the possibility of arahantship without jhanas. So according to Bhikkhu Bodhi's reading, although these discourses don't say so clearly, Theravada Sutta also, the purpose of the Theravada Sutta was to establish that somebody can attain arahanthood without jhanas. I suspect that the question Susima posed to the Panyayamutta monks in this version, which confirm their lack of the superknowledge and the formless attainment, but stop short at the jhanas. Stop short at the jhanas means they don't get jhanas. Were also intended to hint. Hint means don't say directly, but by their very silence, that similar questions could have been asked about the jhanas, and that the same answer would have been given. Actually, in the Susima Sutta, Susima doesn't ask these questions about the jhanas. He only asks about the formless. But Bhikkhu Bodhi says, in the Sutta, actually it indicates that even Susima could ask same question about the first, second, third, fourth jhanas. But Susima does not answer. It doesn't mean Susima did not ask, but of course Sutta says that, Sutta doesn't say that Susima asked about Rupa jhanas. But suppose Susima asked about Rupa jhanas, then the answer would have been clearly no. But if the answer was clearly no, then it would be a real problem for the standard view of Theravada that arahanthood cannot be attained without jhana. Then I must emphasize that this largely intuition means not direct directly you can prove, but some kind of hunch or some internal idea, we could then understand that the compilers of the versions I have called SA 347 and the Vibhasha did not so much add anything new as simply state explicitly what the redactors of the older version had wanted Sutta to convey from the start. So in other words, Bhikkhu Bodhi says that later suttas who directly said, Sarvastivada suttas directly said that Panya Vimuttarahan don't have jhanas, Bhikkhu Bodhi says it's not really something new. That is exactly what the original Susima Sutta people wanted to convey. Though I say this is large intuition, I do have reasons for this intuition. Now, usually you say intuition is, something that you feel. But on the other hand, he says he has reasons. Apart from those I have brought forth above, there is also the ensuing dialogue between Susima and the Buddha. Ensuing means resulting. On the grounds for the possibility of Panyayamutarahanti. This, however, is a major topic in itself, which I intend to treat in a sequel to the present. Sequel means what follows from the present paper. Reverends, I think we managed to read, although in a hurry, fairly long essay by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Now, this essay, basically I wanted to read with you because, just for the sake of both English and also the content. But content-wise, this is a very good example of modern textual studies. Now, yesterday I talked to you about textual studies, how to do a textual study. But here you have a very good example, where Bhikkhu Bodhi is, one of the leading Theravada monks. So he is engaged in textual studies. Now, the interesting thing is, on the one hand, in order to study a text in the Theravada tradition, he also gets many other Theravada discourses. Okay, that's one thing. The other important thing is, in order to get the Theravada version, in order to discuss, he gets other Chinese sources. Now, this is one reason why I said that, the knowledge about Chinese versions, knowledge to read Chinese, the versions, Chinese translations, is something very important because Bhikkhu Bodhi, he left Sri Lanka now about 10 to 15 years ago, long time ago, and he is living in a Chinese monastery in New York, Mahayana monastery. Now you can, I would suspect that in there, Bhikkhu Bodhi may have studied classical Chinese, and also he may have gotten help from those people who know classical Chinese. Okay. Now you can see that in a textual study, how much wider study we can do if we have access to Chinese sources. Because in Chinese, you get Mula Sarvastivada and all these things. Because it is the Chinese monks who brought these texts and they translated these things into Chinese language. But that doesn't mean that they followed these things. They were Mahayana basically, but they preserved the Buddhist text in Chinese translation. Reverend, that is something very, very important. So, on the one hand, this is a good example for textual studies. On the other hand, this also shows that how comparative textual studies within the Buddhist tradition, you can get the Chinese, then here he has Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya, and the Taisho edition Chinese. Various types. And Mula Sarvastivada. Of course, Mahasangika is good. Among the Chinese version, one is found in the Vinaya Mahasangika. I'm sorry, not Mula Sarva, M means Mahasangika. Another version is Supta number 347, Sanyukta Agama, SA, Sarvastivada. Or perhaps Mula Sarvastivada, counterpart to Sanyutta Nikaya. So you can see that Chinese versions have been used. Okay, In addition to that, Susima's case is something very important because whole problem whether you need jhanas or not in order to attain. So the standard Theravada tradition is one, but according to Bhikkhu Bodhi, Susima Sutta was really compiled in order to indirectly say that one can become an arahant without jhana. Now when it comes to the Sarvastivada version, they directly say that somebody can become an arahant. In the Theravada tradition, it's only the commentary which says that through the concept of Sukha Vipassana. Okay, I will wind up, but do you have any questions or anything? Any questions about the text? Okay, so if there are no questions, but for the next week, reading will be distributed by Venerable Rector. So we will get that maybe by tomorrow or something. So please read that. We will discuss that in the next week. Okay. Yes. Page number 67. Where is the line? Where is it? Okay. Non-arising of any influences in the mind well liberated. What's the question? Okay. Susima then asked him whether he has attained the first, second, third or fourth jhanas, or the peaceful, formless emancipations. And he adds to each question, by the non-arising of any influxes in your mind, is your mind well liberated? What it means is like Susima asks, okay, Venerable, have you attained the first jhana up to fourth, and the formless, peaceful, the emancipations, and by the non-arising of influxes. So by the the attaining these jhanas happens due to the non-rising of the influxes. The sequence is different. Usually we think you attain jhanas first and then you go. But here Susima adds, by the non-arising of any influxes in your mind will liberated. In case, each case monk answers no. Now the thing is this, in this particular version, Mahasangika Vinaya, Susima's question is different. Susima's question, he adds to each question, by the rising of influxes in your mind well liberated. So the jhanas come after. That is why, look at it again. Susima then asked him whether he has attained the first, second, third, fourth jhanas or the peaceful, formless emancipations, and he adds to each question, by the non-arising. So when you say by, so by non-arising of any influxes, asavas in the mind, and mind is well liberated, and then as a result of that, whether you have first, second, third, fourth jhanas or arupa. So actually, that I think corresponds to two types of Panyavimutta Arahant mentioned towards the end. That's my hunch about it. Footnote?
It must have been displaced that Cambridge to support that.
Yeah, he refers to Richard Gomrich's article. Actually, we don't have the Richard Gomrich article. Richard Gomrich seemed to be misled according to Bodhi by not reading something clearly. Cannot even claim that they are free of greed and hatred, and the sutta is most... So according to Bhikkhu Bodhi thinks that Richard Gomrich has misunderstood it. But we need to read the Richard Gomrich's paper in order to understand that,
So you mean cannot even claim that they are free?
Actually, How Buddhism Began is an important book. If you can get hold of that book and read, then you can see that how. two are different from each other. Yes, sir. Hmm? What is that?
71.
Okay, 71.
You guys always explain the break combine both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that we are merged the overlapping of these, the version of this twice. But it does not simply that's defined why it does. In this part was I'm confused.
But it does not simply identify the white lotus as like point blank with the Panya Vimutta. The Arahant liberated by wisdom. It says, rather, by this he shows that dry insight Arahant. No, what it means is like, this is a very subtle distinction. The white lotus Arahant, they portray him to be very close to that, but they don't say it directly. Now, Reverend, this why you don't directly identify is because everybody is dealing with the textual literature, tradition, which is considered to be sacred. So how can you really say something new? So you can only indicate, that is what it means. So you simply hint at that, so the text doesn't necessarily say it. That's what it means. The commentary identifies the red lotus ascetic with the, but it doesn't say directly. By this he shows the dry insight Arahant. That means indicates, but doesn't say directly it is the dry insight Arahant. Now, let me summarize. The whole thing is something like what the Bhikkhu Bodhi says is the very idea of Susima Sutta with some kind of opening doubtful interpretation is Theravada tradition wanted to say that Panya Vimutta Arahant, one can become Panya Vimutta without jhanas. But they simply cannot directly say that because, tradition already accept that you need jhanas. So that is why gradually, but when it comes to commentary has this category called Sukha Vipassaka. Now Sukha Vipassaka category doesn't need jhanas. But even then, even the commentary doesn't say very clearly that, Panya Vimutta can have Arahanthood without jhanas. It's a kind of point that they left on purpose undecided. Because on the one hand, you have the tradition, on the other hand, there is evidence, So, textual analysis is an interesting thing. Now, Bhikkhu Bodhi is on the view that this particular sutta was compiled to give this idea. But on the other hand, if you think that, this sutta really records a historical incident. There was somebody called Susima, he met really the Buddha, this really happened, then of course, the question of formulating a sutta doesn't arise. You understand? So, these textual interpretations are very tricky on the one hand, and we have to assume certain things. I think what you need to do is read this again and try to summarize Bhikkhu Bodhi's interpretation in your own words. If you can do that within 1,000 words, 1,000 words, this has about almost 7,000-8,000. I think then we can see that whether you understood or not. Now, if you want to do that, please do it and give it to me. I will correct it if you want. I can do that. But then, you can make a summary of that. You can really, then you can see what the Bhikkhu Bodhi says and how he develops his argument. So take this as a real case of textual study and then to do on your own studies, okay?
I think it is a misunderstanding ending arhata with ending without vijnana and without ending without vijnana arhata.
Well, Arahant and Abhinya is somewhat different, right? But again, Abhinya, Pubbhe, Nivas, Chutupa, Tasavakke, and then to go to those things you need jhanas. So the whole point is that without any of those things, somebody can be liberated by wisdom alone. So the funny thing is, this particular discussion is only available around Susima. We don't have any other discourses. Of course, the list is there. Panya Vimutta, Saddha Vimutta, Saddhanusari, Dhammanusari, and so on. So, but what they really mean. On the other hand, if there is no real difference, then why should you have a category? Okay. Yes, sir.
So, page 55.
Uh-huh.
Number 2, the one liberated by wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the middle, here I confuse
Which one is that?
historical basis for the origination of this Sutta.
Mm-hmm.
The actual dialogue, particularly in the first part, is partly the work of the compilers
Of the text.
But when we say, is it the work of the compilers of the text, it means it's not the Buddha talk.
It says only, it says the first part. But first part is compilers because first part says a story.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not the word of the Buddha anyway. Because it says that Susima, it talks about what happened with the Anyatityas, and Anyatityas were affected by, the losing their supporters. So that part is not the Buddha's, it's a history. It's the compilers anyway, Reverend.
But a work of the compilers.
A compiler means, one who compiled the sutta. No, that part is Reverend history. Because there is a story why Susima became a follower of the Buddha. Now that story is not the part of the Buddha's thing. It is what may have happened.
But in the tradition, example, we have the principle for Buddhist council, example, apanyatang na panyapasanti.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that is about the Vinaya, not about the Sutta. That's about the Vinaya. No, don't misunderstand. Reverend, a sutta may have a story. Now, even if you take Samanyapala Sutta, it has a story of King Ajatasattu coming to the Buddha and all the... Now, those you don't want to say the word of the Buddha. Those are the compilers put those words. Who came, how the king came, and all those are details. And then the Dhamma is the real Dhamma that is started. Now, any sutta. You take Alagaddupan Sutta, there's a long story, Gaddabadi Pubba, and how he had this wrong view. Now those are compilers' words. And then, the actual word of the Buddha is the Dhamma words, or the words may have uttered by the Buddha. So any sutta has these two things. Now, take for example, Bahudeva Manusacha Mangalani Achintayum, Akankamana Sottanam Ruhi Mangalamuttama. Now, whose is that word? Buddha's? No.
No. If you say like that, so maybe in the Buddhist council there are many versions of Sutta because the story, the compilers will be change something. So in the Buddhist council, maybe after 100 years, maybe there is maybe many versions of
Yeah, definitely. There are many versions. But ultimately, now Susima Sutta indicates even in the Dhamma matters, there is a distinction. But the many versions, maybe version doesn't necessarily mean that it is different, Dhamma is different. Dhamma analysis can be the same, but the Nidana Katha and other things can be many. So many versions means, there can be slight differences. Now that is why, Mula Sarvastivada, Mahasangika, all these texts are available now, some in Chinese. So then you can see the many versions. So because, it's natural. Buddhist monks grew up, developed in different areas, different places. So they memorize things. In their memory, certain things may have been changed. So unknowingly, certain things may have been changed knowingly, certain things may have been changed unknowingly. Yeah. I know your difficulty, but
because memory is example, it have many different versions. So up to the sixth Buddhist Council, so we will have many versions of Tipitaka.
Well,
in that Buddhist Council, rather almost Tipitaka from the Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Thailand, and even in Myanmar, almost are same.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, we are just talking about the Theravada version. Yeah. Theravada version did not differ. But these are not Theravada alone. Theravada, Mahasangika, Mulasarvastivadi, different monastic traditions. But within one tradition, there is hardly any versions. Now, Susima is only one sutta in the Sanyutta Nikaya. There are no versions of Susima in the Theravada. But there are versions of Susima in the other Nikayas. So not Theravada. So what was in the Sangayanas, Chatta Sangayana and all that, there is a Theravada only, Reverend. Not any other things.
Yeah,
so
of compilers.
Yeah. Well, the work of compilers, of course, compilers did these things at some time, at least in the first Sangana. Now, if you take Evam Me Sutang Ekam Samayan, that's a compiler's word, not the Buddha's word. But then the Buddha's...
From the Venerable Ananda.
Yeah, Venerable Ananda.
Yeah.
And then, Venerable Ananda and, Ananda's... but Reverend, all these suttas were not uttered in the first Sangana by Venerable Ananda. It will take like not 3 months, then, 3 years or even more years. But, monks got together and sat down and they prepare these nidanas, okay, according to their memory. So, a lot of compilation work has gone into it. But, after Nidana Katha, when you take the Dhamma, Dhamma is attributed to the Buddha. Dhamma is taught by the Buddha. So, there cannot be a difference in that. Okay? Not in the Dhamma, but in the details. What happened, where happened, who are the people, and, so on and so forth. Okay? So, of course, there are compilers. Either Venerable Ananda is the compiler, or there's a set of compilers. Without compilers, who can do that? Somebody has to keep record these things. Somebody has to put the nidana. Somebody has to tell the story. But these stories, say for example, Susima's story, may have come from the very early period. But as Bhikkhu Bodhi shows, there are certain differences even in the questions. Mahasangika edition, Susima doesn't ask questions about all 5. He asks only about 2. But that's not a very important distinction. That's not very important. So like that. Anyhow, it will be very good for you to study this again. And if any of you want to do the summary of that, do it and show it to me. I will give you comments. You can give me a printout so that I can come in. Okay, Venerables, I will wind up today's discussion from here. So this is not a break. We will, we will complete it. And then see you next week. Okay. Okay.